Okay, so for sections 8.3, 8.4, and 8.5, you're going to have to take a parabola that's in standard form. Notice that these are in standard form, and I forgot my y equals, so let me just write those. But these parabolas are in standard form, and we need to convert them into vertex/graphing form in order to graph. So, here's my y equals. Okay. So in order to convert from standard form to graphing form, we need to complete the square. And remember, the first step in completing the square is we're going to take our middle coefficient and divide it by 2. So we have -4 divided by 2, that's -2. Our second step is to square -2. -2 squared is 4. So remember, we're going to add and subtract 4 from this part of the equation, the right-hand side. So if we add and subtract 4, we get y equals x squared minus 4x plus 6 plus 4 minus 4. Okay, so I want you guys to look at that for a second because there's a perfect square involved in that equation. So I'm going to underline it in red, the perfect square. So x squared minus 4x plus 4 is a perfect square. So I'm going to rewrite that out front. I'm taking these caps off. Y equals, I'm going to write the perfect square in red. And then we have plus 6 minus 4. Okay, so if we were to factor this, we would get x minus 2 times x minus 2 and y. -2 times -2 is 4, and -2 plus -2 is -4. So I'm going to write that as y equals, so the factors were x minus 2 times x minus 2 plus 6 minus 4. Now, this is a perfect square, so we get x minus 2 squared plus 6 minus 4. Okie dokie. So, notice all we have to do, because it looks like we're pretty darn close to vertex graphing form, we just need to simplify plus 6 minus 4. So we get y equals x minus 2 squared. And then what's 6 minus 4? That's 2 plus 2. And look, our a is just 1. There's nothing here, so it means our a is 1. Our h is 2, because our minus is in the equation, and our k is 2. So I'm going to stop here, but if you need help graphing this parabola, just go re-watch. I think it was section 8.2 where I graphed it from vertex form. So now we're in vertex form and we can graph. So let's do another one. And look, this one's a little bit harder just because we have a 2 right here, and here we didn't have anything. So the first step, if you see that there's a leading coefficient of 2, is to factor it out. So we're going to factor out 2 from everything. 2 times, when we factor out 2, we get x squared plus 10x divided by 2 is 5x plus 7 over 2. We can't divide 7 by 2, so I'm just going to write it as a fraction. Okay, so we factored out the leading coefficient. So our next step, I want you to focus your attention on what's in the parentheses. We're going to take the middle coefficient and divide it by 2, just like we did here. So our first step, we're completing the square right now, and we're going to put it in vertex form. So take the middle coefficient, 5, and divide it by 2. So I'm just going to leave it like that because I don't want any decimals right now. Then we're going to square it. But I'm not even going to simplify that. I'm going to leave it like this. So now our next step was to add and subtract what we found when we squared it from the equation and focus on just the parentheses. So we have y equals 2 times x squared plus 5x plus 7 over 2, and then add and subtract 5 halves squared. So add 5 halves squared and subtract 5 halves squared. Notice we didn't change anything here because this is 0. But we did find our perfect square, which I'm going to underline in red. So let's rewrite that. I'm actually going to use black. I'm writing our perfect square first. Okay, so this is our perfect square, and I'm just going to write what it factors into. So we get y equals 2 times x squared, or it's x plus 5 over 2 squared. If we were to factor that, it would be the perfect square. Let me make sure I'm right. I don't want to lead you astray. Yes. Perfect. Okay, now what are we forgetting? We're forgetting our plus 7/2 minus 5 over 2 squared. Okay, so now all we need to do is simplify this. So let's go ahead and simplify that. I'm gonna work over here, so camera lady, please follow me. It's 7/2. I'm just simplifying this right now, and then I'm gonna plug whatever I get back in right here. 7/2 minus 5/2 squared. So what do you think my first step should be? I should probably square this fraction, right? So we have 7/2 minus 5 squared is 25. 2 squared is 4. So when we subtract fractions, we need a common denominator. So our common denominator is 4, which means I need to multiply this fraction by 2 over 2. So 7 times 2 is 14. And 2 times 2 is 4, minus 25 over 4. So if we subtract those fractions, the denominator stays. 14 minus 25 is negative 11 over 4. So we're going to replace this whole chunk with 11 over 4. So I'm going to rewrite equals 2 times x plus 5 over 2. That whole guy squared minus 11 over 4. So we're almost done. The only thing that we have left to do is to distribute our 2 back in. Ooh. Distribute our 2. So we get y equals 2 times x plus 5 over 2 squared minus, and then negative 11 over 4 times 2 is negative 11 over 2. Did I make enough parentheses? Yes. Okay, so now look here. Our A is 2. Our H, since we have plus 5 over 2, our H is negative 5 over 2. Do you notice how those signs are different? And then plus K, which means our K is negative 11 over 2. So we are in vertex form, and that means we can graph that parabola. That's it.